Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another deck profile. Today I am here with Oliver, who played Blue Boujack, and he is going to try to convince us today that Blue Boujack is the best blue deck. Those are words from his mouth, not from mine. So, Oliver, how's it going today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you for having me here.
No problem, man. It's always exciting to have a really cool deck like this, succeed, especially at the level that you did. So, from what you told me, in 2 different tournaments, you managed to get first place in Swiss. One of those ended up being a top 8, and one of those ended up actually being a first place at a fest, right?
Yeah, that's correct. So I came first place in Swiss in both Leeds and Cardiff for the UK fests. And then in Leeds, I got knocked out in top 8, but then I managed to take the whole of the Cardiff tournament.
Gotcha. Okay, so I remember talking about this in my meta breakdown where I was saying that Blue Boujack does seem pretty interesting in a meta that's more aggressive because, you're a leader that thrives off the combo step, right? And that does seem pretty good in an aggro meta. So, in your words, why play Boujack right now?
So I've been on Bojack since release. I've been working on the deck. It's been like my little pet project for a really, really long time. And I've always thought that the deck was good. It just had its hard matchups. But with the recent ban list with Cell Surge getting banned, so hand control isn't really a thing anymore, and also Fu Shrouded getting banned, are really, really good things for the deck, and it puts this deck in a really good spot, because one of the deck's weakest matchups was hand control, and also Fu Shrouded was just a good way to counter the deck, because it's a blue deck that doesn't run God Sealing, so it's very easy to just drop Fu Shrouded and win the game against this deck. So it's just in a good spot. It does well into aggro and control really nicely, because it outgrinds all the control decks, and it can duel out all of the aggro decks to get to its prime turns.
Gotcha. And that's really interesting that you mentioned it doesn't play God Sealing. I mean, obviously we can see that here, right? But I think, anyone building a blue deck that plays a unison, I think they would just assume to play God Sealing, right? So before we get into the main, I guess talk to me a little bit about why you don't particularly play God Sealing.
So there's a couple of good reasons. The first one is on the leader's backside, it has an auto where you discard a card and you basically untap 4 energy. But you're locked out of counter skills from your hand for the turn, and so that includes counter attacks but also counter plays, and so during a turn where you would want to use that auto, you can't then God Sealing after using the auto. Another reason is the unison we're playing is only coming down on turn 4, and by that point a lot of the big battle cards in the metagame right now have deflect, so like the 8-drop Goku or the 8-drop Vegeta from the U7 deck, those are going to be like the sort of main targets you want to God Seal, and I believe both of those have deflect. And also by the time you drop your unison, that's often when people start targeting your unison rather than your leader. And then I think the final reason is, well, from personal experience, what I've done is I've just baited people into thinking I have God Sealing because they don't know that I'm not playing it.
Right.
So there was a time in the Leeds Fest where I was really trying to defend my unison going into a Sin Shenron turn 6. And so I was using Childs to defend the unison and stuff. And he just didn't tap 6 because he thought I had God Sealing, and he would have lost if he tapped out into a God Sealing in that spot.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think you could definitely get away with playing those mind games, right? Because again, I think most people are going to assume that you are going to play God Sealing because it's just that good of a card. But I definitely like your rationale for not playing it. All right, so let's get into the main board then. So, okay, I think the biggest thing here is Galactic Buster, right? It was errated to only be playable in a blue Boujack leader, so obviously you're taking big advantage of that. And our main targets for this, it looks like, we have Boujack the Evildoer, which was, at the time, I think one of the most broken cards in blue, giving them that, post-battle removal / interruption. I think that was huge. Zangia essentially being a super combo. And then Goku the Evildoer. This is not one that people usually played in the Soul Striker builds, but it does actually have the nice benefit of being able to remove 1-drops, right? So that definitely seems like the heart and soul of the deck. I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. But yeah, I mean, it does make this deck just super, super combo intensive, right? Would you say the deck is just basically fully reactionary in that way?
Yeah, sort of. There are definitely turns where you want to be attacking and then comboing and stuff from either your hand or energy just to remove the opponent's board on your turn. But a lot of the deck is just there are turns where I'll pass turn on 5 or 6 energy open and just let my opponent do their thing until they attack me.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's a lot of how the old Soul Striker build used to play too. And then we have Boujack on a rampage, of course. You want to be able to resolve that off of your Galactic Buster, this being your big boss. I think what we'll do is we'll talk about some of the other Boujack Brigade cards and kind of their role in the deck, because a lot of times these cards are more like locked to this type of leader. So Boujack, I'm just going to refresh myself on his effect real quick. If your leader's a Boujack Brigade card, negate the attack and play this card. If you activated this card's counter attack skill from your energy, place top card of your deck in your energy and rest mode. You can activate this card's counter skill from your energy by paying its energy cost and choosing one card in your hand, discarding it. Okay, so I could be totally wrong, but wasn't there some weird controversy with like the way the leader worked once you use the discard ability and this card's effect, or am I thinking about something else?
If there is, I've not heard of it. I'm not entirely sure. The main reason I'm playing this is, as you said, to use it with the leader's auto, so you can use it from your energy even under the leader's auto effect, because it only restricts you from playing counter skills from your hand for the turn,
right?
So you can still activate the effect in energy. And it also means that I don't have to run a card like D-Magic, because in this deck you don't really need the untap 2 from D-Magic that you would in a lot of other blue decks.
Mm-hmm.
And so these 1-drop negates like the Boujack and also All Too Easy that I can use under my leader effect are just much better than D-Magic. And then if my opponent's going for my unison instead, Childs is the best way to deal with that, and that's just better than D-Magic again, because not only does it defend 2 attacks on the unison, but the blocker token can force a combat step, so then you can combo in stuff from your energy or your hand and still make good use of your activate battle skill, even if your opponent's targeting the unison.
Yeah, and that's a good thing you bring up too. It's very similar to like the principles of like an arrival based deck, where if you play a unison, you want to force a combo step, and yeah, Child's Army is definitely great for doing that, as well as like your Boo Unison, right? Which in this deck gets you even more value because it's part of your alternate awaken condition. At 3 copies with the Boo Unison, did you find that you saw it when you needed it?
Yeah, so this deck doesn't really draw a huge amount, especially in the early game, but you take a lot of life in the early game. You want to go down to either at least 5 life, and then hopefully you get down to 3 life as well. Because this deck's a bit weird in that the super combo breakpoint is 5 life, and then the awaken breakpoint is 3 life, whereas for most decks it's of course going to be 4 life for both.
Right.
And so you take a lot of life in the early game, and you're also flipping cards into your energy. So if you ever see a super combo and you flip a Majin Buu into your energy, you can just grab it back if you don't have it.
Right, fair enough. All right, so we can go back into some of these Boujack Brigade cards. So we have the tournament pack card here, the Age of Destruction Boujack. So I'm going to refresh myself and the audience real quick again. So when this card's in rest mode, your opponent's battle cards with energy costs greater than or equal to their current energy can't attack leaders, which in this format seems super relevant. Auto for 1, if your leader card's a Boujack Brigade or has Agent of Destruction in its card name. At the end of a battle in which this card using the combo from your hand or energy, you may play this card from your drop area in rest mode, and then when this card's KO'd, draw 1. So, yeah, I mean, was this card mostly serving that purpose of the floodgate type of thing? Like, it does seem a little bit vulnerable, you know, without barrier or without deflect, but how did this card perform for you?
This card, in the current meta, in my opinion, is one of the weakest cards in the deck, and it was the card that I sided out quite a lot, because its main purpose is to deal with aggro decks, right? And the main aggro decks in the meta currently are Red U7 Goku and Gogeta Zeno.
Mm-hmm.
And so against Red, they can minus through it pretty easily with like the Vegeta 4-drop or the Frieza 4-drop that minus 15k or minus 20k. And then against Gogeta Zeno, they can just warp it with a thwarting swing, and it kind of soaks up a thwarting swing because they can't attack your leader with the attack. But then you don't get the draw, you don't reach the combo step because it gets warped instantly. And so this card doesn't really do so much in the current meta. I was running 3 before the previous ban list, but I just cut it down to 2, and I've been siding it out quite a lot. But it's still an okay card. It definitely has its uses. It's nice into yellow decks, especially the Trunks, yellow Trunks deck from set 16, because it can block like the big 8-drop that comes down, or Turles All Too Easy. Even if they KO it, you're still getting a draw, and that's not so bad.
Right, yeah, that makes sense because actually, yeah, this format is chock full of removal. Basically, all decks have like crazy amounts of removal, so I can definitely see where you're coming from with that one. And then we have Goku, which seems to be just our typical archetype searcher. And activate battle, you could pay 1 for him to gain critical. And I think Beto has a similar effect, right? Where, yeah, you could pay 1, he gains double strike. So were these 2 cards at all helpful in you being aggressive, or were those kind of just like ignorable effects?
These cards are really, really strong in the deck, absolutely. One of the main things you want to do in Bojack is you want to sync your energy, because the leader activate battle, once you've comboed with a card from your energy, you flip the top card of your deck in rest mode. So you want to be making sure that you make use of the energy that you combo with before you combo with it. And so obviously playing the 1-drops is a great energy sync, but then swinging with them and being able to buff them up over the course of the next following turns if they stay around is really helpful. And the reason I'm running 4 Goku over the 4 Beto, and I'm running 2 Beto instead of 4, is because the crit is especially good because it's the way that you can pressure the slower decks. Like against yellow or any sort of slow blue deck, you can just be pressuring with crits, and then once they get into that low life range, you can slam down one of your finishers and just take the game from there. Beto's mainly useful for those decks that establish an early unison. So it was nice against red U7, but they would just remove it a lot of the time. But it's mainly good against decks like the Trunk Xeno deck that drops a turn 2 unison and kind of relies on that unison sticking about to gain most of its advantage.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. I do like the fact that you have like a a cheap crit option. Yeah, like you said, when you're playing like a Soul Striker or maybe even like a yellow deck, and you can just wear them down with crit. I think that's pretty awesome. Only 3 being, I'm a little surprised about just being how combo centric this deck is. But did you feel like 3 was the right number?
Yeah, 3 feels really good. I was siding a 4th for the more aggressive matchups, mainly for black in general, just anything running the thwarting package, anything with low to the ground aggro. But you really don't need that much untap in this deck because you have your Galactic Busters, you have your Xeno Super combos. They're effectively giving you an energy each time you use them. And then, like I said before, you're often passing turn with like 4, 5, 6 energy open once you get to the later stages. And so 3 being, you often only need to see like 1 being throughout the game to really survive the early aggro of some of the aggro decks. Especially because you're free comboing every turn as well.
Gotcha. And yeah, I think Zeno is the perfect super combo for this deck, right? Because, I mean, the draw super combo is not always going to be super reliable, and Zamasu is probably unnecessary in this deck, and yeah, Zeno just sets up a lot of plays. All right, so Android 17 turning the tide. This is just a one-of, just in case, games go super long.
Yeah, it didn't really come up for me so much in the last tournament, but it came up for me in Leeds quite a bit. It's mostly just there for the blue matchup because Fu gets hit by God Sealing, and so Android 17 doesn't, but it's also very nice into yellow because they don't really have so much interaction with it, and then once you get rid of their hand, they can't interact with anything. But yeah, it's mostly just for games that can go long.
Right. And then all too easy makes sense because it works from the drop area and your leader prevents, activating from the hand, so that makes sense. And then the SS Go tanks I find interesting. So this is I guess your 4th copy of a 4-drop unison. So is this mostly here for the barrier removal?
Yes. The main reason it's there is for the barrier removal, and then also, so most of the time this card is going to be good against yellow because they have like Poutine, they have the new 3-drop yellow trunks, and they have the Lord Slug package. And so this obviously deals with those cards extremely well, but it also is a dual attack unison, and so it gets really nicely under riposte when you want to be putting the pressure on against yellow. And what I often do against yellow is just swinging with a battle card first every turn, and then if they drop riposte, swing with Boo, and then when I really want to try and kill them, just tap 4 and drop the Go tanks over the Boo, -3 to get rid of some cards, or draw 2 if I need to, and then I get 2 more swings where I don't have to rest another card.
Nice. Oh yeah, that's a really awesome play into riposte for sure. All right, then cool thing about Baby Hatch, I mean, it's obvious SCR to play in blue, but cool thing is, like, if you ramp it off your leader, you can always pick it up with Zeno Edge of Space, which I think is a pretty cool synergy. And then the one Realm of the Gods, I've been seeing a lot of blue decks tech this just for like some removal. And then Food Dark Banisher, so I think this is the card we'll wrap up on the main deck. Yeah, it seems to just be like the Fu Shrouded in Mystery replacement, but I don't think a lot of people are quite catching on to that yet. So yeah, how was the effectiveness of this card for you on the weekend?
This card was incredible. This card won me like almost all of my games, because there were times where I would tap 4 for Boo Unison on turn 4, and then if my opponent couldn't deal with the board that I'd already established in the early turns, I'd just be able to follow it up with a Fu to not to at least put the pressure on, but a lot of the time I was just killing them on turn 5 with the board that I had. This card is really, really strong in this format, and I'm really enjoying playing it.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I do think this is definitely going to catch on as a Fu Shrouded replacement. I think it's very, very good. I mean, there's some circumstances where it's obviously a little bit worse, but I mean, they banned Fu Shrouded for a reason, right? It's supposed to be a little bit worse, but it's definitely super, super good. All right, so we'll go on to the sideboard here. So 2 Deborah, assuming just, for hand control. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming Boujack can actually struggle against hand control pretty fairly, huh?
Yeah, hand control is one of the weaker matchups for this deck, and that's the reason why I sided Deborah, because hand control is... I haven't really seen anyone playing it during this meta, but I was like a little bit worried that there was going to be that one person at one of the events that I played against that was going to play it. And so I was siding Deborah just so that I didn't like auto lose to that matchup.
For sure, yeah. I mean, there are like some rogue style hand control decks, and it's not super popular, but yeah, I think it's better to be prepared than to not. And then we have 3 copies of Isekai, so this is great against your decks like Yellow Trunks, like King Piccolo. This is like kind of like Blue's version of Koitsukai. It's pretty nice because in this deck it seems like you want to avoid playing off-color cards because you might ramp them with your leader. Although you can always pick them up, but I mean obviously you want to keep that limited, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And then Kava Proud Zenith. This is really interesting because it seems like your deck can bring it online pretty easily because you'll spam a lot of battle cards into the board. But what was the reason for siding 1 copy?
I was originally maining 1 copy. There was one space that I had in the deck that I was flickering between about 5 or 6 cards before each event. And between every test game, I was just changing that 1 card out for a different card. And this was originally that space. I just found that it was basically too expensive and it didn't come up enough. Most of the time, unless you're playing against exactly a yellow deck that's running the slug package and you need the barrier removal, most of the time you're better off just playing like a 4-drop Boujack for 2 energy instead of the 3.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, I think that this could be relevant against like kind of like what you're saying with the Gotenks Unison, like Poutines, the Trunks blocker, stuff like that. But yeah, it definitely just makes it kind of good in just like that one matchup.
Yeah.
Then we have another copy of Realm of the Gods, another copy of Senzu Bean, just some ratio fixing. And then we have a Tapion Unison. Okay, so yeah, definitely talk to me about this one.
Okay, I have to give a massive, massive shout out to Tom Smith from Team Deck Planet for this one, because he put me on this tech. But this card, the first auto is completely irrelevant because you're not playing a Trunks Future Leader. The second auto, you can trigger it, I believe, but it doesn't do anything, so you can just use it to gain the marker. But the -2 activate main is where this card really comes in clutch. So in testing, I was struggling a lot against the new Wish Zamasu deck. And we found this card, well, I didn't find this card, Tom found this card. But the -2 activate main says you can choose one of your opponent's battle cards to negate its skills for the turn and place it under this card. So you can use this to remove the 9-drop Indestructible Zamasu with Aegis. You can also use this to remove the 9-drop Sin Shenron and they don't get the auto because the skills are negated. And you can also use this to remove the 5-drop Golden Freezer that has the permanent where it can't be removed by skills. And those 3 cards are very, very tricky for this deck to deal with otherwise. The 9-drop Sin, not so much, but the other 2 cards are like really, really good cards against this deck.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, yeah, that's pretty disgusting. Yeah, that seems really, really good. I like that a lot.
The only thing you have to watch out for is you have to use the effect when the card has 3 or more markers to remove the battle card as well, because you can't, if you use it when it has 2 markers on, the Unison will then go to the drop area and then you can't place the card under the Unison anymore. I think it's a similar ruling to like the Khaleefly Unison for the Kale deck.
Yes, yep, that makes perfect sense. Yep, they have to be on board to resolve the rest of that effect. Yep, absolutely. But no, I like that tech a lot. Shout out to Tom. That's pretty cool. All right, then 2 Dirty Burst, just great for big boss monsters. It works against Fu the Dark Banisher and other big boss monsters like that. And then Boujack the Evildoer. So let me refresh my memory on this card real quick. So it's a 1-drop 5k combo, unique blocker, pay 1. If your leader's a blue Boujack at the end of a battle, which you combo with this card from your hand or energy, play this card from your drop. And then when this card's played, choose one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost greater than their energy, and it can't attack or be using a combo until the end of the next turn. Okay, so refreshing my memory on this, I actually remember like when Boujack was first revealed back then, like testing against this, and this card being super, super annoying. But obviously, that's not like the focus of your deck. You're just siding it in, I'm assuming, for, you know, bigger battle cards, right? So how did this card work out for you?
Yeah, this card, I really, really like this card, and I used to be maining it. But then when there was that whole discrepancy around the end of turn rulings, where it's like the end of your opponent's next turn, I sided it out, or I put it into the side deck because I thought it wasn't so good anymore because it couldn't lock a battle card down for 2 turns. And then when that thing got resolved, I decided that it was working better in the side deck anyway because it's a very easy card for your opponent to play around. They just swing with the big battle card first. But the main matchup that this card comes in against is against any sort of deck that is running thwarting package, so like Gogeta Zeno or Trunk Zeno or anything like that. Because when they have the thwarting on the board, you can then swing into something, combo this from your hand, and then just lock down their thwarting for a turn. And because it's got unique, they can't play another one, and then they can't combo it off because of the Boujack effect. They can't swing with it. And thwarting is a card that this deck can have a bit of trouble with because it's a big attacker, so it's not so easy to free combo out of. It's double strike, and it's also removing your board as it attacks, and this deck likes to build a board during the opponent's turn. So it can give this deck a bit of trouble, but this card just completely shuts thwarting down.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So, all right, that's the whole deck. So a couple closing questions. What do you think are some of the matchups that this plays poorly into? We kind of already talked about hand control, but that's not like a super popular matchup in the meta. So what meta matchups do you think this kind of struggles against?
I think it can struggle against U7 Goku, but I found on the weekend that I was able to play it out pretty well, and I was able to definitely take some games. It kind of depends on whether you're siding first or not. Like, if it's a best of 3 format, game 1 against U7 Goku is extremely tricky. But once you get Dirty Bursts in the side and you get your extra Realm of the Gods in, it becomes so much easier because Dirty Burst comes in against the 8-drop Goku. Other than that, I think hand control is the main one, and mill can be definitely a big struggle. Because this deck goes through its deck really quickly, because every time you use the Activate Battle, you're losing a card from the top of your deck. And then you're also drawing all of your cards on top of that.
Gotcha. And then what matchups do you think this plays favorably into?
Any sort of low to the ground aggro deck, like Gogeta Zeno, Kidku, anything that just plays small battle cards to try and hit you with, because your Goku can remove the 1-drops that they might play. And you can just free combo out of any 10k swings or 15k swings on your backside. And then also into any deck, any like long game blue deck. I haven't tested against SS4 ramp, to be fair, but against Soul Striker, this deck just completely outvalues it. And I think I've only ever lost 1 game against Soul Striker with this deck. Because the amount of value you can generate is so insane, and then you can just rely on Android 17 turning the tide to win the game.
Awesome. Very cool, Oliver. All right, man. Thank you so much for going through this with us. I appreciate it. Congratulations. And take it away with any shout-outs you want to throw out there.
Yes, so as I said before, I have to give a huge shout-out to Tom Smith for the tech in the sideboard, but also shout-out to everyone that I've been testing with for these events. Shout-out to my team, the Scrub Squad, although I think we're rebranding to -Fu, then drop Fu or something like that. Because in the tournament, I played against a U7 Goku, who was my teammate, who was stalling me out with the Vegeta -2 unison. And we got to turn 8, and I just tapped 8 for Fu and tried to kill him through that, and it worked out. But also, for you guys watching, definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel, Big O Notation. I'm going to be doing some in-depth guides, like matchup breakdowns for this deck and stuff. So definitely check that stuff out as well.
Awesome, man. Congrats, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.